think the reality for me was that I didn't want to sort of speak about what I was doing until I saw the results, and I wanted my actions to speak louder than my words.
I think when you're starting a business, especially when you're an entrepreneur, what happens is most people don't get your vision. So I think to protect your vision and to protect your goal, best thing is that you protect who you tell.
The reality is if your dreams and your aspirations aren't crazy enough for them to not understand it and for them to kind of think you're a little bit cuckoo, then I don't think you're dreaming high enough.
Sometimes it's better to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission.
Hey guys, it's Vin. I've been with Evans for over a year now as part of the Mastermind community. I've gone on to scale on my portfolio of over a dozen rent-to-service accommodation units. I've got a 5-figure deal sourcing business and now going into commercial developments as well.
How does the student quit university from becoming a doctor to now building a 12-unit property portfolio? Well, in this episode, you're going to find out exactly how to do this. My name is Willie, and I'm the host of the Level Up podcast. But most importantly today we're shooting a very important podcast. We're shooting our superstar on a Sunday, and I'm so excited because I've got a superstar in my midst, right? He's obviously traveled loads of minutes to get here. And I finally got his time, right? He doesn't need to be here, but he's obviously on the same mission to give back, and he remembers where he came from. So please help me welcome my brother, my friend, none other than Mr. Vineth. What's happening, bro?
I'm good, my bro. How are you?
I'm phenomenal, man. Thank you for obviously gracing us with your presence. I know your time is very...
No. I'm blessed to be here, and yeah, thank you for having me.
No worries, man. So I just want to have a little chat with you. Number one, let's obviously start off, where you came from. What I really want to do in this podcast, I really want to get to know a little bit about you. And you have done a bit of creative strategies in property. We're going to delve in that into a minute. And then towards the end, we're going to spill the beans and tell them how much money are you making right now. So first and foremost, why don't you always tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, where you're from, and before property, what were you doing?
Yeah, so as Evans introduced me earlier, my name is Vin, and I was born in the UK in South Croydon. So for all of those Croydon peeps out there, big shout out to CR0. And my parents actually migrated here after a civil war in Sri Lanka. That's where my mother tongue is and where my sort of culture is from, Sri Lanka, specifically Tamil. For those of you who don't know, there was a huge civil war in Sri Lanka in around the 90s and early 2000s, hence why my parents migrated here. And so me and my younger brother were born here, born and raised, went through the education system in the UK, and I was online to sort of become a doctor. So as most people did, I put my head down, trying to break the Asian stereotype to become a doctor, and studied hard, put my head down, studied in school, and got into med school eventually, and was pursuing medicine. And that's when I came across property.
Amazing, man. And you did start med school, didn't you?
Yes. I was in med school when I started property.
And how long were you in med school? And then what happened that made you want to be like, you know what, I need to get out of here?
Yeah, after all the trials and tribulations of getting into med school, I obviously got into it, and obviously the hard work even continued there as well. And then 2019, around when COVID hit, it kind of was a big eye-opener for me as to sort of what reality was going to be like for me for the rest of my life. As many of you knew, how the NHS was strained and sort of the lack of support that they were getting. And the reality was for me was this is what the future was going to be for me. I didn't know if that was going to be worth it, putting in all the hours and work and you're not really getting appreciated for it, both financially and I think just emotionally as well and mentally. So I think that was a big turning point for me. But yeah, and that's when I came across property, and I saw that as almost a way out to getting into financial freedom.
Okay. Now, I am from the Caribbean. I know if I was to quit med school and go into entrepreneurship, my parents would have gone absolutely crazy. So I'm not sure what it's like in the Asian family. What was the house like? What was your parents like when you said to them that you're going to quit this and you're going to go into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And truth be told, I actually never really told my dad when I did get kick-started.
I like that formula.
Yeah, well, I mean, that works for a lot of things, and a lot of people do that. But I think the reality for me was that I didn't want to sort of speak about what I was doing until I saw the results. And I wanted my actions to speak louder than my words. Because no matter what you're doing, it's not just entrepreneurship. Whatever you do, whether it's your career or your personal life, when you bring your partner to your parents, you know, the reality is you'd rather them actually see it for themselves and, you know, see your success and see your actions and let those speak, as opposed to you trying to convince them. Because I think the best way you can convince someone is with results.
You know, I love that, man. That's very, very, very powerful what you've just said, because I now see a lot of people. I was speaking to an individual, you know, just a couple of days ago, and I said to him, you know what, Evans, I've seen your journey. I've spoken to a few of your students. I want to do this, but I just want to speak to my mom first and see if she's obviously, you know, okay, this and the other, right? And I'm like, have you got the funds to do it? He said to me, yeah, I do. I'm like, then why are you going to speak to her first, right? And one of the things that I learned from St. Lucia, right, which is obviously very similar to obviously what you did, is I used to ask my mom to go out or go to play football or go to play cricket, and she always just say no. She was so anti, because I was the baby, right? And she was like, no, if you go, you're gonna break your leg and this, that, and the other. Now I love football, so I ended up playing football so well that I actually got scouted to play for St. Lucia, and she still didn't even know I was playing football, right? And I remember the day I was flying out from St. Lucia, my first ever trip. I remember like it was yesterday. What happened was I actually got the entire team on a minibus on the way to the airport. They stopped at my mom's house. Everybody came down, came to my mom's, and then asked my mom collectively as a group, can I travel to Trinidad, right? And from that day, one thing I learned is that, you know, and by the way, she said yes, by the way. From that day, what I learned is that sometimes it's better to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission. Which is exactly what you did.
Yeah,
you never told them. You got out there, you did your thing, and now obviously I'm pretty sure they obviously are now happy that you made the decision.
Yeah, 100%. Because I think now that when I speak about it, it's like there's no if, buts, and maybes. Because I think when you go, especially when you speak about something that's very foreign, especially to your parents, because they're obviously from a different generation. So when you speak about entrepreneurship, like, you know, my dad's been in entrepreneurship, but he's been the sort of traditional way. You know, right. He was sort of running off licenses and sort of chicken shops. So that's, again, it is business, but it's a very traditional way of doing it. So, you know, the idea about property, and obviously we'll go into a lot more detail further on, but, you know, the creative ways that you can get into property, for him, that just didn't make sense, and it wouldn't have made sense. So the reality for me was I'd rather first see the money come in. And so when I actually do go and tell him, you know, I've invested in training, or, you know, I've gone on to do property, the reality is I've also got the bank statements to match it as well. So, 100%. You know, it's like Evan said, you know, it's so much easier to ask for forgiveness when it goes your way. Right,
100%. And the reality of it is, if it, now worst case scenario, if it doesn't go well, he doesn't know.
Yeah, and I don't think he would ever know.
He would never know. So I think, you know what, that's a very good formula. I did that a lot growing up, right? Because sometimes they just don't get it.
Yeah.
They just don't get it. And no matter what you tell them, they will never see and they will never understand what you understand.
100%. And I think the reality is if your dreams and your aspirations aren't crazy enough for them to not understand it, and for them to kind of think you're a little bit cuckoo, then I don't think you're dreaming high enough. And I think that's something that you, I think, once spoke to me as well. Like, you sometimes do have to be a bit, you know, loco and coco in business or 100%. In life as well, in order to, you know, achieve what you want to achieve as well.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I think some people are too cool to be successful. If you become successful, you have to allow the being cool for a little while, because people will not. When someone doesn't get what you're doing, automatically they think you're crazy, isn't it? Right? I remember, obviously, I was reading something about a guy named John Harrington, right? And back in the 1950s, what happened was everyone was using a pit toilet, right? And he had a vision to put the toilet into the house, because he's like, nah, it's too cold at night. He's obviously English. He's like, it's too cold at night. He had a vision to bring it into the house. Now that thing, if anybody watching this podcast know what a pit toilet is, we know that thing smells very bad, right? Because there's no flush. You just do a number 2 or whatever. It goes straight down into a hole, and when you open that door, everything hits you in the face. Yeah. So he had a vision to bring this into the house. Everybody thought it was crazy, but he had a vision to obviously incorporate the flush toilet where it's not going to sting that much. Now, if you go to somebody's house and say you want to do a number 2, and they bring you 2 minutes walk and then show you a shed. What's gonna happen? You're gonna feel crazy, right?
Yeah.
So that's the thing. When you're starting a business, especially when you're an entrepreneur, what happens is most people don't get your vision. So I think to protect your vision and to protect your goal, I think the best thing is that you protect who you tell.
Yeah.
If you know your mom's gonna be a bit negative, you're not gonna be a bit negative. There's no point to tell them.
No, 100%. I think, one thing that was always stuck with me as well, like when you start entrepreneurship, like most people won't understand it, but I think sometimes you just need one person to just give you that belief and sort of believe in you and just say, go for it. And sometimes that can come in different forms. For me, it was my partner, Priya, and for other people, it can, for other parts of me, I had a few people, I had mentors who also sort of guided me and said, you can do it. So sometimes you just need that one person. And, if you don't have someone, close family or people around you, friends or family, that's why, getting a mentor is great, I think, having that one person who's done it and then can believe you because they've seen that journey, they've seen that path that you want to take as well.
Amazing, man. And speaking about obviously having a mentor, you had a little bit of a journey, didn't you? I remember when I first met you, you came to, I think it was one of my very first few events I started to do was basically in my lounge, just down the road. Yeah. I'm in Canary Wharf.
Shifted across now, hasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So I was obviously, you came into my lounge and I remember you were sitting there almost the entire event. You barely spoke, you barely did anything, you barely said. But at the end of the event, you actually came to me and said, you know what it is? You want to get onto the next level. And then I found out a little bit about your backstory. Why don't you obviously share a little bit about your backstory and how you got started and stuff like that?
Yeah, so obviously partway through medicine and during the COVID pandemic time, I'd sort of just had a bit of time to sort of look into different things. And I actually came across this video on YouTube about how a man, I think it was titled like Rags to Riches, where, he became financially free within 7 days. And I was just like, I've just read a book about, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. For those of you who haven't read it, definitely read it. And, I was like, financial freedom, I've definitely heard of that. And it kind of like sparked something. So I obviously clickbaited and obviously clicked onto the YouTube video. And I literally just sat it in one sitting. For those of you who've seen the video, it's like an hour's long, I think. And obviously it was the journey of, Evans and how he sort of, started with, I think from the top of my head, it was around £5 in your bank account, if I'm not wrong. And at the end of the video, he was literally in an apartment, not as high as this one, but obviously still pretty high up for most people. And, had, become financially free. At the time he was living, with his girlfriend, on a single bed. So for me, it was an eye opener, and I was like, wow, if someone can do that, why can't I do it? I'm in medicine, I'm educated. So if someone can do it with, who's actually kind of migrated into this country and English isn't even their first, language. So I was like, why can't I do it? So I kind of related to that a lot because I saw my dad's journey and how he struggled. And I was like, wow, imagine if he had 7 days and he could become financially free. So got more into sort of like the video, and I found out some training. I went up and signed up with a mentor for some advanced training in property, and using different strategies like rent to rent, deal sourcing. I got into the training and it was very informative. I got all that sort of the A to Z. However, I was doing it for a couple of weeks and it turned into months and I wasn't really seeing any results. Now, I don't know if it was the fact that I wasn't putting my effort into it or, the reality was I was distracted with medicine, but I kind of got a little bit comfortable, and that's when I kind of came across Evans because obviously I remembered Evans from the video because that was the highlight for me to sort of get kick-started. It was that leap of faith. So, came to Evans and I was just like most people that come to networking events, just wanted to sort of like network, try to find investors or just speak to people who are doing well. I just wanted to have a chat with Evans and just see, what he's doing now. I hadn't known that he was actually doing training at that time as well. So when I spoke to him at the end of the event, I was like, wow, I didn't actually even know that you were doing this, because if that was the case, probably would have made a beeline to you first. And we spoke, and I think Evans, just made it very clear to me, sometimes you just got to just go for it. And, sometimes you need that one-to-one. And I think that's what is very different about you as opposed to other mentors that I've experienced. They're all, the knowledge is always the same, but I feel like that one-to-one companionship and that hand holding that you get, which some people do, need, especially when I'm a bit of an introvert myself. So when you've got a room of 200 people, there's a lot of extroverts that do quite well, whereas the introverts tend to sort of get blended into the background. But that's not to say introverts can't do business. Some of the formidable minds in the 21st century are introverts, and I've started off with as introverts as well. So ended up sort of speaking to you, and then the rest is history, really. We're here now.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I remember like yesterday, obviously you came, and I remember you saying to me that you were doing property for how many months? I think you said about 4 or 5 months. Is that correct?
I think it was like 3-4 months. Yeah.
And you also, one of the reasons why you were a little bit, down, not down, but you were a little bit like laid back, is because you invested a lot of money as well.
Yeah, 100%. Like I'd obviously invested, over like 12,000-13,000 pounds.
Crazy.
So it's a lot of money, and by the way, at this stage my dad still doesn't know or has any idea. I was actually working at the time in hospitality, and it was like full-time working there and balancing med school. So I'd used it to try and sort of fund my education and my brother's education in university as well, to help my dad, give him a bit of hassle-free and sort of ease off the stress of him. But I'd use that sort of big pot of money into education. So when you like spend and make a large sum of investment, it's a bit of a sacrifice and it's a bit of a financial burden, and you don't see the results straight away. It's very human when your emotions become very attached to money and you're like, wow, I haven't got any results, so maybe this isn't for me. And the imposter syndrome started to kick in when I kind of think when I met you.
Yeah, man. So what? One thing I like about you is that you were 10,000-12,000 pounds already, already in property already. 5 months in, you obviously get any result. When you came to me, it was like a little bit like, and I told you, what, bro? I know you've obviously invested that kind of money, but you haven't worked with me. You can't give me a chance. I am different. You know what I mean? And I remember you obviously saying, what, I'm in. And you obviously came down to a Bootcamp that we had, the Financial Freedom Bootcamp. And what happened from there? Talk to me from what happened from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think what it was that was really, different for me was that how sort of close it was. You knew me by, on a name by name basis. I think we actually spoke on Instagram a little bit before, a couple of weeks before the actual bootcamp as well. So it wasn't like, I was meeting someone just like off a screen. It felt like I already had that kind of personal rapport. And we'd gone through everything, which I'd already kind of understood. And it was more sort of about actually doing it in person with someone who's actually done it before, jumping on the calls and actually having someone who's done it to say, Vin, you actually need to do this. Because like I said, when you're in a group of like 200 people and you go off to go do sort of like core exercises or you practice it, it's very hard for, other trainers to give every single person in that room time and attention. And I completely understand that. Whereas when it's a small group of people, and it wasn't just Evans, I think it was just his team as well. We had obviously
you got that intimate touch.
Yeah, and I think Ellen was again a great person to help me out. I think having the balance between both of you definitely helped me sort of like just get to it, because I think that's the reality of business. Is a lot of people spend too much time faffing around with things like logos, websites, and all of that. But I remember one thing that you told me is like, the thing that makes money, you need to concentrate on that, and that's just taking action. So that's what I did, and literally fast forward a week, I literally had keys to my first set of rent service accommodation unit.
That's amazing, man.
Which I still have to today, actually. Yeah.
Wicked. And we're gonna get into that in a minute. So obviously you came to the Bootcamp, you got a bit more bespoke help support. You like the fact that I remember your name. You see, I tell people all the time. I tell people all the time, like, someone's name is one of the most important things that can come out of somebody's mouth.
Yeah, because you didn't even have like a name badge or anything like that. You just like, I was like, wow.
Yeah. But to be fair, it was a simple name, Vin. I mean, how can you forget the name Vin? Like, it's not hard to forget, right? Anyone who forgets your name, you go unfriend them or unfollow them, right? But yeah, obviously you came to the Bootcamp, obviously got knowledge, but before you obviously secured your deal, which obviously in a few weeks after, as you said, you did a big move, man.
Yeah.
You joined the Level Up Mastermind, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
You joined the Mastermind. You're like, you know what, bro? And I remember having this convo with you. I'm like, bro, when you win, because I saw it in you, I genuinely did. I said, when you win, no one's gonna ask you how much money you paid at the beginning. You see, that's what stops a lot of people, the barrier to entry. Yeah. Which your barrier is a lot higher than most people, because you've obviously invested, £12,000 already, plus you invested another few £1,000 into the Mastermind, so that your barrier was obviously high. But your belief in yourself and my belief in you is obviously a recipe for success.
No, 100%.
And then you got your first deal a few weeks after, and then what happened after that first deal?
Yeah, so after that first deal, I think that's what it is. It's like literally getting the first one. And I remember speaking to you and other people in the property environment as well. Like your first one is always the hardest. And I know it almost sounds like sort of like, you know, overused, and you feel like you're just being spoon-fed that same line again and again. But the reality is the truth. It's because that first deal takes the most out of you because you don't truly believe it. And I think even when I had the keys in my hand, I remember actually, you know, messaging you. I think you actually came out that same day. Actually,
it came out,
you came out to see the unit, and I remember we literally shot like a video, and I was like, Evans, bro, I still don't really believe it. And I don't think I believed it till maybe I think a month or so. Like not even when the first payout.
When the money's in your account.
Yeah, but I think when it stays in your account. Because I think that's what it is. And I think, and also even when it was in my account, like it still doesn't really make sense, because the reality is because you're so used to, you know, going through the system of sort of getting paid after you work and sort of, you know, at the end of the month or waiting for your pay slip. So when you automatically in business and entrepreneurship, like when you're getting money come in and then go, and it's like a cash flow system, it feels like it's fake, because it just feels like figures in a back on a screen. Like it doesn't actually feel like it's actually happening. And then after like a couple of weeks and months of doing it repeatedly, and then, you know, like Evans just asked me, like snowballing. So I think within a couple of weeks, and I was coming to your events to speak, and I had to keep saying, Evans, I can't make it, bro. And he was like, why can't you make it? And I was just like, well, I'm picking up this second set of keys and third 100%. Set of keys. And I think, you know, within like 3-4 months, I remember being on a call with you, and you asked me like how many units, and I think I said like half a dozen. Now you're just like, wait, when did this happen? I was like, bro, it's just happening.
It's crazy, man.
Yeah.
Crazy. So obviously, you know, it took you a little bit of a while to obviously get yours. As soon as you obviously joined the mastermind, you got yours within a few weeks, right? But what would you say is the biggest difference to getting your first one to now getting, you know, half a dozen, and to obviously scaling to where you are right now? Do you think it's a physical thing, or do you think it's a bit of a mindset shift where you've done it one time, you've proven to yourself you can do it again?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both, because I think obviously once you've broken that mental barrier that you can do it, it does become a lot easier, because you're kind of, because you've done it once, it's literally copying and pasting like you would do with anything. It's almost like riding a bike. When you ride a bike for the first time, it's a bit of a struggle. You're gonna have to fall down, you're gonna learn, you're gonna bruise. And same thing with entrepreneurship as well. Like when you get your first unit, you do learn a lot as well, because yes, you learn about all the sort of contingencies and the due diligence, but when you actually run a unit yourself, you kind of learn a lot more about how to run the business day to day. And especially when you're starting your business as well, I think you would have felt this as well when you started off, and a lot of entrepreneurs do this. When you start off your business, you're literally every sort of role in your business. So you're literally your whole power team, whether it's, you know, you do your own accountancy, you do your finance.
Wear all the caps.
You wear all the caps, you know, you don't have someone to like do all the emails and the admin work. And I think when you scale up, that's where you learn. I think that's the difference now to where I was in my first unit, is I've been able to delegate a lot of that, you know, different caps to different people and build a power team around it. And I think that's very important to do while you scale up. But when you first start off and when you first see the money come in, you kind of want to learn how to, you know, almost be a jack of all trades and learn the different roles before you delegate it, because it's very hard to delegate a role if you don't know it yourself, or kind of know the surface of it. I'm not trying to say you need to be a, you know, specialist in it.
Absolutely.
But you kind of need to understand it in order to delegate to someone else.
100%. Because if you don't know the role yourself, when someone is doing it, you're not sure they're pulling the wool over your eye.
100%.
Because they could just be talking to you in bed gibberish, and you wouldn't understand what they're doing, make it sound like they're doing something very difficult, but they're not really doing it. So it's important for you to know it yourself. If you know it yourself, then you know when someone's capping or not.
100%. And I think it's very, you know, it's very hard for you to fit your power team in the first go. You know, you're going to kiss a few frogs before you get to your prince, almost. Like, you know, you're going to go through a few people, and that's where, like Evan just said right now, you want to know kind of what they're doing, so then you can kind of test it, because I think that's how you build a team, right? You're going to go through trials and tribulations to see, you know, who's the best fit for you and if you're a good fit for them, because I don't think everyone's a good fit for everyone. Sometimes you have different people that work better for you for different roles.
Absolutely, 100%. So your first unit was if I'm not mistaken, a rental service accommodation? Yes,
it was.
And how much was that making you per calendar month?
So it was a 2-bed flat near Greenwich, and per calendar month, you know, my first month I remember making around 1.2k. But as the months went on, what I realized was I was kind of directing marketing sort of long-term bookings. And those people who are on SA all know about sort of like long-term bookings and how juicy they can come.
So how were you getting your long-term bookings? Where were you getting it from? Were you getting it from a specific site? Were you doing the manual labor to go into contractors yourself? What was your formula of getting the long-term bookings?
It's a good question, because I think it's a mixture of everything. I don't think there's just one sort of marketing ploy that you could use to sort of market your property. You've got to try everything and see which one works. And the reality is sometimes you get leads from different sources. So it was a bit of sort of marketing on certain websites, platforms. You've got things like, you've got your bread and butter with Airbnb and Booking.com, where you can like promote your listing for longer term bookings. Then you've got your channel managers who can obviously go onto like 100 different OTAs and market it, not just about OTAs in the UK, but abroad as well. And then you've got also like the physical version of doing it, which was obviously going into institutions like hospitals, speaking to HR departments in different, universities, hospitals, company firms, and sort of just marketing your property. Funny thing you asked me this, because I was speaking to actually someone in the mastermind on a call, I think it was last week, and they were asking me about sort of marketing. And I remember doing something, because I think I briefly mentioned that I was in hospitality when I was sort of getting into property. And one thing I used to do actually was I used to go into hotel car parks and I used to look at these sort of contractor firms that had like their vans parked out. They have like on the side of their vans, they've got like company names and contact numbers. And what I used to do is actually like, I think it was like half an hour before my shift started into the hotel, I'd actually go around the hotel and actually note down all these numbers and the companies and then put it onto a spreadsheet. And then when I got back, I would actually the next day call up all these companies and just say, hey, I saw that you're obviously staying in the area for providing accommodation for your staff members. We've actually got a few units in the area as well. Would it be of interest? Were you looking for sort of like long-term bookings? And I think those kind of things, the person I was speaking to said, wow, that's something that I never thought of. But I think the reality of business is you sometimes do have to have these kind of quirks and sort of different ways of marketing, because if you do the same thing again and again, the reality is if your competition is doing the same thing, it's not really going to stand out. And I think business, especially in the profit margins, especially when a lot of people are getting into the rent-to-rent portfolio and the service accommodation strategy, you do want to make your business a little bit different and market in a different way.
Now that is super smart. That's super smart, and that really shows that you do whatever it takes to do it. And I tell a few students to do this. Some of them don't, some of them do, but it's a very smart way. The reality of it is it requires some manual labor. You're gonna have to go to the hotel car parks to find the vans there, right? I rarely stay in like not high-end hotels, right? But what happened was a few months ago I did a challenge with Manfred. I was meant to stay in his house, right? And when I came to his house, I've realized that he actually lives in a HMO and I couldn't live there. So I'm like, what hotel could I book? Funny enough, in Leicester, I couldn't find a hotel. So we found a hotel that was probably about like 10-minute drive. It was either a Holiday Inn or something. I think maybe a travel lodge. It was not a very high-end hotel. However, I'm very grateful I went there now. Why? Because when I went there, we saw about 5 different vans of contractors. In fact, when we were checking in, there was about 2 different contractors that was obviously there. Yeah. And I'm just like, wow, there's opportunities right there. Imagine you obviously approach those individuals and you can obviously get that exactly what you did. You can now house them. Instead of staying in a cheap, hotel, they can stay in a lovely Airbnb where they have their own fridge and they have Netflix. Yeah. They haven't even got Netflix in those hotels, right? So that is a very good way of getting long-term bookings, man. So absolutely amazing. So you went from 1 and then you scaled to half a dozen within like 4 months. Yeah. Were they all the same model? Did you rinse and repeat the model, or did you obviously do different strategies, or do you stick to the Airbnb service accommodation strategy?
Yeah, I think it was, so my units were all sort of service accommodation, because I just had that expertise of working in hospitality. And
love that.
I think sometimes when you start business as well, you want to draw on your personal experiences as well. Because I think everyone's got sort of like some sort of experience. It doesn't matter, how, you might not have a lot of money, you might have a lot of money, but the reality is we've all gone through life with experiences. And I think that's what I always tell other people as well when they get into it. It doesn't have to be hospitality. I was speaking to someone the other day who used to work for banks, and I was just like, so did your bank ever need, when they had like people coming from abroad or international projects, did they ever need accommodation? And they're like, yeah, that's actually true that we did. And I was like, well, there you go, that's your story right there.
See, the thing about it is, I'm writing a book right. Well, I've wrote the book. It's coming out. It's called The Ability to Edit Your Life. See, the thing is, a lot of people don't edit their life. What you did that's got you here, which you were working in a hotel as well. You're working in a hotel, and then you obviously realize, hold on a minute, that hotel is making millions of pounds, right?
Using the same strategy.
Right? Why can you not do it yourself? And obviously you came from there. Obviously you now build a portfolio. A lot of people are sitting in and around money, but they're just not aware. They don't see the opportunity, right? And I think what you did that's different to them is you got the knowledge. The knowledge gave you the glasses to see the opportunity, and now you've grasped the opportunity. You went from 1 unit, you went to 6 in 4 months. You said. Fast forward a few months now, how many units have you got now and you're controlling your portfolio?
Yeah, so I control over a dozen, and I think the reason why I've gone there is, like you said as well, is just seeing opportunity, because a lot of people ask me like, how do you do it? Because like, how do you like recycle your cash so quickly to get multiple units? Like, do you have like a lot of capital? And the reality is no, because what I did was just use the same knowledge that I had and use that credibility to actually work with other landlords. I've joint ventured with a lot of landlords. I think I messaged you the other week as well, and we're speaking about a landlord who's actually gone on to offer me multiple properties, and in fact actually Michael, his son as well, saw doing and actually came to one of your events as well. Exactly. So I think that's the thing, like once you do it once and you get someone that can give you that trust. And sometimes that's what I said, you just need that one landlord who gives you that one trust. And 100%. You never know how, that one landlord has got over like 20 properties.
So you got in with that one landlord's got over 20 properties and you've managed quite a few from him.
Yeah, and I've tried to joint venture with him as well, because sometimes you can't always have, the reality is in business, you're not always going to have the capital there. So I think a big thing, and I think I've learned this Crown, this is really did hit a lot of stigmas and a lot of negative stereotypes, because a lot of Asian people don't like to use other people's money, and they don't like to borrow money, and they have like a lot of negative sort of a kind of like a little afterthought 100%. About it.
It's the same like obviously black people. We don't like to ask people for their thing, especially their money.
Yeah.
However, though, if you've realized there's more money out of your bank account than there is in your account, right?
Yeah, I love that saying.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So why don't you obviously get in the habit of using other people's money? Because how you do anything is how you do everything.
100%.
Right? Now, those 12 properties obviously you manage right now, how much are they bringing you on a monthly basis on average?
So obviously with serviced accommodation, it does obviously fluctuate.
Absolutely,
as you know,
100%.
obviously depending on your direct bookings and sort of like the seasonal change as well. But on average, I always say, being very conservative, around £1,000 each unit. So it's bringing me over sort of 5 figures.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're talking about over £10,000 per calendar month.
That's a mixture of sort of units that I own and manage for other people.
It's
as well.
absolutely mental, bro. Yeah. Massive well done, man.
I appreciate that.
I'm really proud of you.
Yeah.
But I know you haven't stopped there. That's not your only income stream property.
No.
You also do something called deal sourcing as well, right?
Yeah.
Now, since you've been working with me, how many deals do you reckon you've sold, and how much money do you reckon that amounts to?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because I think I was talking to someone on my team the other day, and we were actually trying to do the figures. And I think we, on average, I've been deal sourcing properly, like full time, since last year around June, July. So full time. Before then, I'd already sold one deal here and there, but consistently, that's when I sort of focused into sort of coming away from sort of my rent-to-rent portfolio and getting people to manage it and focus on deal sourcing. So since then, I think I've sold over definitely like around 25 like cut out like from direct, and then we've obviously sold like a dozen just from like co-sourcing as well.
That is crazy, man. The average deal is obviously sold for how much on average?
So on average 3k, but there have been deals that we've sold on for a lot more as well, depending on how juicy.
So the ones that you've done yourself directly, 25, that equates to £75,000.
Yeah.
Plus you've obviously done some co-sourcing where you have to split the fee.
Yeah.
Bro, absolutely amazing.
No, I appreciate that.
You see, I told you when I first met you, I told you this, and now obviously on this podcast, we can obviously now see if what I'm saying is correct. I did tell you at the beginning, when you make it, no one's going to ask you, no one's going to care how much money you invested.
No,
because when you started, you invested £12,000, another 7 or 8 into the mastermind, so about £20,000 into your training. But just from deal sourcing alone, you've made over £75,000.
Yeah.
And you're now making an average for your rent portfolio over 10 grand.
Yeah.
So fast forward now about a year since it's been, my question to you is that has it been worth it to invest that amount of money at the beginning?
No, 100%. And I think when I speak about this, I always kind of have like an analogy, and I think I heard it from somewhere. I didn't make it up myself, but it's a bit like getting your driving license. Like, when you go on to get your driving license, you might go through a lot of lessons. You might fail your theory a couple of times, your practical a couple of times. But once you actually get your license, it doesn't actually ever say in your license how many sort of tests you failed or how many lessons you went on. In fact, the reality is no one really cares. They just care about what car you're driving.
Exactly.
Whether you're driving like a Lambo, like an Urus Orange that's parked outside Canary Wharf. That's what people care about. So the reality is that's the same thing with business as well. Like, no one actually comes and asks me, then like, how much did you actually invest at the beginning? I mean, what they normally ask me is how did you get into it?
Yes.
And obviously how much you're making. Like, it's the question that everyone asks me.
But no one asks you how much did you invest in how many times did you fail? How many L's you got? How many landlords said no to you? No. Right? So absolutely amazing, man. So how would you say the mastermind has helped you to obviously, achieve that? Because you've done phenomenally well in the last year, bro. And I remember when you got started to where you are now, you've obviously, it's a landslide. Yeah. So how would you say obviously the mastermind has helped you to obviously get to where you are right now?
It's a good point, because I think what's actually helped me, and it goes back to actually a very famous saying that I have in my language, by someone I look up to, a role model in my language. He's actually an actor. I think you sometimes see him in my laptop when you see it. So his name is Ajit Kumar, right? He's an Indian actor, and he says this where he says Ennam Pol Valke, and I'll translate that from Tamil. It basically means life is as you think, right? And I think what I really took from that, and that's like a life philosophy I have, but the reason it helped me a lot in property, and especially the reason why it ties into the mastermind, is what your thought process is like is what your output is going to be. And I think in property as well, when you first start off, you've got to have sort of the thought process of, being creative, having positive thoughts. And that's very hard to have when you're on your own. When you do it on your own, there are going to be ups and downs. And it's very easy to sort of succumb to sort of like those negative thoughts. But when you're in a community that's also thriving to do the same thing, and you see these success stories, and you have people, such as Evans and, other communities as well. And there are tons of people in this property community in the UK. And when you're sort of like, going back and forth with them with these positive thoughts, there's only really one outcome that ends up winning, and that's always going to be a positive outcome. And it's very easy to say that I've done this, I've done that, but I think a big part of that has been having that positive thought process, and it's a lot easier to have that when you're part of a community like the mastermind. Jumping on the weekly calls, or just meet up people every sort of every 3 months or 2 months when we've got sort of like the events that we hold. It's just nice to just be around people that actually understand what you're doing.
Absolutely.
And it goes back to what we said at the beginning, when when you first starting, when you don't want to really tell people around you until you see the success. The reality is you still want to be able to talk to some people about it. You don't want to just keep it to yourself. So that's when you want to leverage off a community such as like the mastermind, where you've got people who are winning and also going through the same sort of issues and tribunals that you're going through as well.
Absolutely. And you've obviously used the mastermind yourself to obviously do business. You've sold deals within there. You've obviously partnered with people. You've raised finance. You've done things within that community.
Yeah, 100%. Because the reality is, property is a people's business. Like, you're not going to be able to do business by yourself. It's not like there are other businesses where you can put your money into like crypto or stuff like that, where you can just put your money in there and it can make money for you. But the reality is property is a people's business.
Correct.
And it's all about, I think what we do in property is all about just giving value and trading that value for money, and sometimes not even money. Sometimes it can be experience as well.
Absolutely.
So within the mastermind, it's always about giving each other value.
I don't really,
exactly. I don't really like saying transaction, because it feels very businessy when you talk like that. But I think when you just value exchange, exchange value, it can be different in all sorts of forms. I was speaking to you about just jumping on calls with people in the mastermind. I love doing that because it's really nice to just exchange value. And you'd be very surprised. A lot of people think it's me giving out value, but I do get a lot of value from it as well, because the reality is you're not going to know everything.
Absolutely.
And especially in a dynamic, changing, business such as property, you're never going to know everything. So as opposed to knowing everything yourself, if you're in a community, you're more likely to get closer to knowing everything, because you can leverage off other people's knowledge as well.
Absolutely, man. 100%, man. So obviously, knowing what you know now, Vin, fast forward, it's been a year-ish, you've started up in property. What advice would you give to somebody watching this video and wanting to get started off, wanting to be like you, wanting to get the results that you get now? What advice would you give to them knowing what you know now?
I think the advice that I'd give And again, it takes to me actually to another saying that someone said, actually a Formula One racer called Ayrton Senna. I think you watch a lot of Formula One, right?
Yeah, I watch.
I don't know if you've, so he used to race in sort of like the late 80s and early 90s. He was a three-time F1 world champion, a Brazilian Formula One driver. A lot of Brazilians, you know, still look up to him. And he used to say a saying that on a sunny day, you know, you can't actually overtake cars. It's very hard to. But on a rainy day, you can overtake anyone, right? And what that basically was saying is that, you know, when there's like hurdles, it kind of levels out the playing field, right? And that's where people can go in, you know, as opposed to your car being very good. As you know, in Formula One, like the cars and the engines have a lot more of a say than sometimes the driving, you know, skill set. No matter how good you are at driving, sometimes if you're starting at the, you know, end of the podium, or, you know, if you don't have a great engine, it's very hard for you to, you know, get into a podium finish. Whereas what he said and what he did was he used to race a lot better in the wet conditions. And I think that's the same thing in property as well. Like when there's, you know, issues and then when there's hurdles to face, that's when you want a niche, and that's when you want to actually thrive. And sometimes I think when you've got those obstacles, when you've got a mentor or you've got a community, I think it helps you thrive a lot better than someone that doesn't. Because, you know, when I go onto these viewings and I, you know, go into negotiating with landlords, I can see that I'm obviously clearly competing with other people looking to do the same sort of strategy. But I think what takes me apart is having sort of like a power team, you know, leveraging of people's experience and contacts like yourself. I always say, you know, people who are around Evans, you're not just gaining his experience, you've also got a list of all his contacts. You know, you're not just like leveraging him, you're leveraging your phone contacts as well. And I think, you know, you've been in the game for like, you know, 5-6 years now. The amount of people that you've sort of got in your contact list, it's worth, I'm telling you guys, it's worth a lot more. Like it probably would be worth my whole portfolio, because I know that I can, if I start again from zero, I can start again and do it again just by leveraging off 100%. Sort of you and other 100%. People in the game as well. 100%. So I think that's what my advice would be, is try and have that quirk, whether that's, you know, getting a mentor or, you know, trying something out in your property, you know, strategy that's different. Try not to, you know, follow the masses, you know, be your own person and try and be different. I think that's the biggest advice that I can give someone.
Amazing, man, amazing. Well, listen guys, you heard it from the horse's mouth himself. Absolutely incredible. He's now financially free in property. He's now obviously, you know, somebody I actually consider as a friend, no longer a student. And you know, it's absolutely humbling, you know, to be part of your journey and to be part of your success. And that's why I do this, because I want the mission to help people to do the things that you're doing. Because right now, because of property, you don't really have to ever worry about going to do a job again. Yeah.
I mean, I think I had that conversation where people are like, oh, so would you ever like go back into medicine? And I don't think I'll ever write it out, because I don't think what life holds for you. And I think life is too short for you to, you know, always have like a set plan. It's always constantly changing. But I think the reality is that it definitely, this sort of journey has given me the opportunity to do a lot of things that I don't think I could have imagined to do.
Absolutely.
Main things is, you know, even just being here, being able to talk to people like you, like-minded people like you, not having to worry about, you know, taking annual leave to come and speak to you. Mainly just being able to spend time with family.
It's giving you the freedom.
100%.
To do whatever you want to do, however you want to do it.
Yeah, and on my own terms as well. And I think that's a big thing for anyone out there. Live life on your own terms, guys.
Amazing, man. Well, listen, guys, I hope you found this podcast, this video, absolutely amazing. And if you haven't smashed the like and the subscribe button, now is a very good time to do so. I hope you found this video enticing. Make sure you share this video to somebody that you think is going to benefit from it. And as I always say, have a good day. Peace out. Make sure you click the link around this video as well. Come down to an event, come down to a free event or join a virtual event. Maybe you might get to meet Vin in person, have a convo with himself. I'll put Vin's details below this video as well. I hope you guys like it. Make sure you follow me on Instagram. Smash the like. Have a good day. Peace out. See you later.